This is Ukraine, as you probably know by now. Its warmongering neighbor Russia is right over there, and we'll forget about Belarus for the moment because, well, Belarus isn't important and Alexander Lukashenko isn't the real president there anyway. Yes, you can start fighting in the comments right now or in a few minutes, it won't take long. If we take a closer look at Ukraine, we can see there is a peninsula there over in the south. That's Crimea, which belongs to Ukraine, but has been temporarily occupied by Russia since 2014. Yes, that's around the time Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 was shot down over eastern Ukraine. Yes, that's related on how Crimea was occupied. It was only in 2022 that the dictator of Russia, he will be in power as long as he lives, decided to create a so-called land bridge to Crimea. The reason being that he needed this connection to make sure he would not lose Crimea later on. At least, that's what he told the world. We are now over 500 days in this war and see that tourists, Russian tourists that is, are still finding their way to Crimea in huge numbers. Apparently there is something about Crimea that is so special they don't have it back home. It might be the beautiful beaches, the friendly Ukrainian people. I mean, Russia is big as it is. Why exactly travel to occupied lands? The thing is, to get from and to Crimea from Russia, as no Ukrainian will travel there for leisure at the moment, isn't very easy anymore. Back in the day there used to be flights from and to Simferopol, but those came to a halt with the full-scale war. That left happy Russian holidaymakers with few other options. There is a ferry connection at the eastern side of the peninsula that connects Crimea with Russia at the village of Kerch. Now this name might sound a bell, as it's also the location of the only real investment old fart Putin ever made for the occupied peninsula. He built a multi-billion-dollar bridge indeed. The problem is, bridges aren't very easy to move around when shit breaks out. We have seen numerous threats to the bridge since war broke out, but it was October 8, 2022 that brought joy to many around the world, but mainly in Ukraine, when images emerged of a burning freight train on the bridge. Later it showed that a number of road sections were destroyed as well. The repairs were finished just in time for the Russian holiday season. In May 2023 it was announced that the bridge was up and running again. Russian travelers did no longer have to queue up for the ferry or wait to cross the bridge. There are additional security checks in place though, as safety is Russia's #1 priority, apparently. With the holiday season in full swing and the realization setting in that war in Ukraine might actually bring the opposite effect than Putin was hoping for, even more Russians decided to travel to Crimea this summer. They're traveling among processions of military vehicles, bringing in weapons, construction materials, but foremost, fresh young men to be sent to the front lines. That all doesn't seem to faze the average Russian though, they're still up for it, having a real beach holiday on occupied land. Every once in a while there was a traffic jam because of an attack on military targets in Crimea by Ukraine. But hey, that's fine, as long as you don't get killed directly and still can send those TikTok videos of incoming missiles to family back in Russia. And then it happened again, June 17, 2023. In the dark of night, 2 explosions rang out near the Kerch bridge. It was hit again, and it would only take a few hours to become clear that the road sections are severely damaged again, stopping all traffic. Train traffic was not affected, but for most travelers this was a real problem. They were now stuck on either side of the bridge. Ferry services were also stopped that day. These were resumed a few days later, but now military vessels are used to bring over holidaygoers. There's also a higher presence of Russian Navy, as these precious travelers need to be protected at all times, as they will bring back a very positive image of their Crimea. Good publicity is badly needed, as it is basically the only thing that can be somewhat spun in a positive direction for Russia, as their whole taking over Ukraine in a few working days didn't exactly pan out. Even worse, they have increasingly been on the losing end of a number of smaller battles in the east and south of Ukraine. But those Russian good news TikTok videos will have to wait for a bit. With the Kerch bridge down for regular traffic and ferries not being the most optimal form of transport for loads of travelers, Russia now has advised travelers to possibly take an alternative route to Crimea. Can you guess which one that is? It probably sounds too hard to believe, but Russian families that are trying to enjoy their summer holiday on occupied land are now advised to travel through the occupied and annexed parts of southern Ukraine. Yes, Russia advises Papa, Mama and the kids to take the long way around through cities like Mariupol, Berdyansk and Melitopol before turning south into Crimea. Still, all these problems seem mere little nuances for Russians traveling to and from Crimea, with the odd one complaining about long waiting times at the ferry, not the fact that they have to travel through an active war zone where drones and missiles can land on your beach tower basically any moment now. No, it's the wait. Not the long and winding road to Zaporizhia with landmines on the left and those failing shark teeth on the right. Call me crazy, but something is seriously and collectively wrong with these people. My guess is that they will find out what happened in future history books, as they don't seem to have a clue on what's going on now. Anyway, happy holiday, I guess. Enjoy it while you can. There's a big chance that it will be your last ever, as any evacuation from Crimea will be one hell of a mess with civilians and military fleeing all towards the east to be the first to cross the Kerch bridge back into Russia. That is, if that bridge still exists by then. But that's a worry for another day, because sun, sea and vodka is what it's really about. Oh, by the way, we're still looking for that war criminal Igor Girkin, who is still alive. If you see him on a beach in Crimea, make sure to photobomb him and send your selfies to the International Criminal Court in The Hague.